Good morning. This is Angela Coulter and
Sieg, Avignone.
bringing you this week's episode of The Ascended World. So go ahead.
Well, I read something this morning online, and it was something somebody put out about the eclipse, which, I stayed up for part of it. And I love watching them. But
Totally forgot. I was totally in my, painting zone. So
right. Well, it was talking about the dark and the light, and the that there's light within the dark, and I don't want to say it put me off, but it's like, why do we have to even differentiate? It's just the whole. It's just the wholeness. It's just all.
Mm-hmm.
And even the resistance is all, and the blocks, and the things that we deem are the bad things, the thing that hold us back. Those are still part of the all.
That's true.
And everything.
Well, we always talk about, there's bringing light into the darkness, like you're saying, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, like we talk about that, but the thing to recognize is that there is no dark without the light, and there's no light without the dark.
Right. So you wouldn't want all of either.
That's the whole duality and separation thing we've created.
But if you also think about it, if the things that we call the resistances or the blocks or the, whatever word we put on it, those are still part of the whole.
Right.
And if you make them the enemy, that's still perpetuating that separation and that duality.
Well, and by nature, this is where we get into mind-bending stuff, right? So by nature, anything that causes us friction or resistance or anger or fear or pain or whatever is from exclusion, right? Is from holding it out and pushing it away,
right? Judging
it and whatever. And that actually in itself is what the darkness is, right? So what we persist is what we create darkness from. And when we what's really interesting is if you really think of it, which I just don't even like thinking about all this separation anymore, because it becomes so much energy, right?
Right. Well, because you have to put so much effort into remembering and separating.
But if we simply accepted, the stuff by nature would go away, and we would stop having the high and low, the light and dark. We would just have the creation, right?
Right.
Which is a completely different experience, right? But that which causes us pain, fear, all that kind of stuff, is the stuff that we judge in some way, shape, or form. I'm separate, I'm in need, I'm in lack. I'm less, not good enough. Or it's not me, right? We hold it in a way that we allow to, and then we judge it. So it's just all this like cyclical thing. So everybody's like, well, how does not judging something allow it to go away? I'm like, because then you stop having resistance to it, which is what the nature of the emotion or the energy is to begin with. And then when you don't have resistance to it, you can look at it and see its purpose in the bigger picture. Because to me, it stops becoming light and dark or good and bad. It's just, how does it fit into the bigger picture that we've created, right, in the symphony?
Right. It's this or that. Instead of
right,
wrong, good, bad, up, down.
Yeah. It's like, well, and this fits into the bigger picture, and this fits in the picture in a different way, and it would cause. Then you start seeing. So in essence, that's how we start seeing things like visions that many call this supernatural psychic thing. But when we start seeing things from that higher perspective, without judgment, then we can see all the roads of possibility. And when people come in to see me in sessions, and I'll be like, so they'll be like, well, is this going to happen? It's going to happen. Well, that's a possibility. This is also a possibility. And a lot of times it's stuff that they don't want to think about because they're afraid or whatever. And then it's like, but when we look at it without judgment, we can see where it fits out in the bigger picture.
Right.
And it makes it that simple. We had talked about I guess you and I were texting on, was it Friday or Saturday, about the cell thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I don't remember what day that was.
We have it so ingrained as part of this whole experience of separation duality that it's in our cells, right? And we've held it for so long. It's not only in our cells, it's in our DNA, right? It's so interesting because you can get so lost, and I look at so much and I think it's so interesting how we have so many different versions, and it's great. So many different versions of the same thing because it's all through the different filters of separation as we experience them, which I think is great, except when what happens is then we try to decide in judgment which is right and which is wrong. Right?
Right.
Instead of they all have their own plausibility. What if I did accept that as a possibility? What would that look like? Right? And I think that's important because we don't realize how many of our actions are motivated by things that we have embedded in ourselves because of such a long-standing resistance to something, fear of something, anger about something. Something you were talking about when we were texting about this, I said, well, all I could think of was the experience I had before we went to Peru, right?
Right.
And I had done a bunch of clearing stuff, resolution, acceptance, what I thought was acceptance, right? Except what happened was I had such a long experience of holding on to that for whatever purpose, motivation to my ego or individuality, that it had embedded itself into my cells.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that even though I might have changed the energy around it, that memory in the cells still existed. And it actually took me I just sat down one day because I was like, well, God, I keep on getting hit in the face. So what happens then when we have it in our cells and we're so, entrenched in something at some really deep level that we don't even consciously acknowledge, is that we might get a message or guidance from the higher self to go a certain way. And it's so embedded, this other thing might be embedded in our cells so much that we just resist, or we're blind to it, or we deny it.
Right.
We make excuses to not do it and everything else or whatever. But when I finally said, okay, so if I accept this possibility of going to Peru and how to do with, past life, that was what I had judged as horrendous and horrendous. And yeah, horrendous is probably the best word for it. That even though I, had changed the energy around it, I had come to conscious acceptance of it, I still held that memory in the cell stuff. I'm like, okay, fine. So if I allow this possibility, because I kept on getting one message after another, it's time to go to Peru, 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 right? And it was like, okay, if I allow this possibility, what would that look like? And what's there for me to do? What's there for me to do to allow this possibility? Because I'm still resisting it.
Right.
And in that one session, it was like I could feel the pain come out of the cells. It was so painful in the moment. I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. Because I had the pain come out.
Right.
And I was just insistent on, I'm going to stay with this and I'm going to flow with it because I'm staying with that intention, that creation of what do I have to do? What would need to be done so that I could be there, right? To allow that possibility. And I could see when it all came out of the cells, the memories that were triggered, the anger, not just anger, but like rage, and
right.
so many different levels and all kind of stuff. And I just like stayed committed to observing, and I could feel the pain, and I felt like I was going to fall over, and I was just like, all right. But in like, I don't know, half hour, it passed through. I felt it. I literally felt it come out of my cells, and it just like a vacuum just sucked it all out. And then I was like, all right, I can do this now.
Right.
And I think we have a lot of that because we've built our identities around those things, right? Whatever those things are that
right. I mean, identity, and then, roles and interactions, relationships, everything takes that into consideration in how you deal with everything.
Yes. And so if we really want to get to a place where we shift beyond anything, it's really how, I guess it would be addressing that, how to be here. What would that look like? What would there be for me to shift within myself to be here? Maybe that's what we do. Because I believe that a lot of chronic pain for people.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what this came from, that discussion of some weird pain coming up. That's what I think a lot of weird pain that's undefined that's coming up for people is coming from right now.
Yep.
Just such deeply embedded stuff.
I found that when I, really delved deep into that it was based on a fear that I had about, being alone, which then translates to not being loved, because I had participated in the creation of separation, which is the epitome of being alone. And that's what I felt that was the baggage. And that it was more than a role. I mean, it literally went all the way down to that cellular level. And it was very physical.
Well, yeah. Well, that's where it goes. When it goes down to the cellular level, it becomes physical allergies and ailments. What was that?
Food intolerances.
Mm-hmm. Skin irritations.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
All kinds of stuff. All kinds of fun stuff.
I think even anxieties.
Oh, yeah. So if we commit ourselves to that place, what I find interesting is in fact, I had an interchange with somebody this morning about this, is this preponderance of neurological issues that people are having. And it's sort of like it's in the nerves. Right?
Yeah.
MS seems to be coming up a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Almost like it's a catch-all.
Yeah. So it's almost like we're moving it now to a different place.
Right.
Wow.
Well, and it can all tie back into that acceptance of everything. Mm-hmm. Which if you come to that place of acceptance of it's all just part of the whole and lose the judgment of that, then that essentially opens the door to the cells to allow that to leave.
Well, and what happens, that's a really big shift for a lot of people, because what happens is then we get triggered by pain, right? And right. So what's the motivation for pain is to avoid pain, right?
Right.
So if we have pain or discomfort, the first thing we do is we get triggered to go in the other direction and do whatever we can do to become out of pain.
Right.
Instead of stepping back and saying, how can I observe this?
Right. How can I use this pain?
Right.
I know that I've had this weird image in my head of when we talk about things being at the cellular level and allowing it to leave, and it can shift so quickly. And I don't know if you've ever seen the pillows or I don't know, I think it's even on shirts and stuff. It's the sequins that you rub it one way and it's one color,
Uh-huh.
and you rub it the other way and it's another color. That's the way I see these cells. It's like, you do this and it's this way, but to release it, you just do this and everything shifts just like that. And that's what I keep seeing with this letting the cells release that, allowing them to release the pain or whatever.
And I look at what's really interesting is, so look at the mess that our government is in right now, right?
Yeah.
And I was laughing because I was laughing about it this weekend because I was thinking about it. It's just I don't even know why, because I typically don't. I really don't even pay attention. Oh, there's a yawn. And I was like, what a personification and a representation at a collective level of our insistence on separation, right?
Right. Insistence. That's a great word.
And I thought, so look at how, as we're becoming, as more and more becoming conscious and remembrance and realization, all that kind of stuff, we are tapping into like the possibility of, okay, let's come back to unity, and how much the ego, represented by somebody who will remain unnamed, is like, no, we must maintain separation. We must build a wall.
Right. Must have a physical barrier.
We must have a physical barrier. And I thought, wow, what an awesome representation.
Well, and you're not safe unless you have that physical barrier.
Right, except the other thing that we don't realize, like that we think about if we look at it from a personal standpoint, is when we don't, because I look at also the neuroses that goes around, right? How many, like, look at like commercials, they're all based on fear, right?
Oh, absolutely. And powerlessness.
Yes. So you have all these things on security systems, on, testing this, on testing that, on
and identity theft and medical. Oh, you're going to be pulled from your family if you don't take this medicine because you're going to have a heart attack.
Right. And things like that. So, and I just think, and we are in such a culture of that. I mean, the media, the news, they talk about all that kind of stuff, that we don't realize that the more we fear, the more we create the necessity to fear, right? So it's because, or the more we are run that way, the more we create the opportunity for that situation to happen, because that's that creation, the separation, the exclusion, right? And still, when we look at the whole, so that's the whole other thing. When we accept the whole, there is no exclusion because it's all part of the whole, right?
Right.
And so it's like this whole other, paradigm shift of, so you're me, and I'm you. The person that I detest the most is me.
Right.
Is just another representation of me. And so then I always tell people, well, then look at what it is that triggers you about that person, because they're just another version of you.
Right.
So yeah, it's really interesting because I just see this wall idea and the fight for it. With the, I'm not necessarily talking politics. I'm talking the bigger picture of, with the ridiculousness of every wall we build causes us to need to build 5 more.
Exactly.
And then we end up putting so much energy into the walls that we forget about how to change things so that we don't need the walls anymore.
Right.
And so that's not just, like I'm saying, at that collective level, right? But at our individual levels. Like, if you fear one thing, how much energy do you put on avoiding it, right? And then every time you
creates distractions.
Yeah. And then all the energy you put to putting this one thing then gives you other things to fear. Oh, well, but I've got to do this and I've got to do this. And oh, well, wait, but to do this, I have to do this. And it's just like, wow, look at all the energy we're wasting on distraction and not looking at the whole and not accepting and not coming to a place of love and unity, because all we're doing is focusing on the perpetuation of exclusion and separation.
Right.
Oh my God. Wow. And that's what I feel like we do in the cells too. Like I literally, when I was looking at that, I could see it in the cells.
Right.
Right. Oh, I can't eat gluten. Oh, I can't eat this. I can't have dairy. I can't have strawberries. I can't have whatever. Right.
Right.
And all the energy of saying I can't, or even I can't have meat, right? Like, or I can't have this kind of food because of my beliefs or my
blood type,
or there's so many. Just think of all of these little walls that we put up all the time. And when, like when we go to Mount Shasta, right? What's usually our biggest theme is really taking down all those walls. And a lot of times, how many times have you seen, because you've come with me almost every time, right? In the beginning of class, how many people will come and they'll be like, oh, well, I can't eat this and I can't eat this and I can't eat this. And by the end of class or by the end of the time together, many are eating or able to eat stuff that they haven't been able to eat because they're just in a different place. They've shifted themselves to a place of inclusion, or it's a different mix, or it's something that's shifted so that they can allow something that they hadn't allowed before. So what's funny though is then they go back, and a lot of times like within weeks or months, like they go back to it because it's a habit.
Right.
Because then we think, oh wait, no, I have to do this because I was this, so I must still be this, right? And I was just,
I can't fix this, so let me distract myself by saying I can't have this.
Right. And so what if, and the thing is, what if we allowed the possibility? Like, what would there be to be done if I allowed that possibility of myself and wholeness?
Right. It's essentially saying, what if I allowed everything?
Yeah.
Which to me feels really empowering, with that underlying, oh shit, what if I did?
Right. Yup. Yeah. And then there was something that came to me, and I can't remember when it was. It was sometime this morning, I think.
Almost like, what if I allowed everything, even to the level of the individual cells?
Right.
So it's not just, well, let me think that I'm allowing everything.
Yes.
It's not even just let me feel like I'm allowing everything. It's let me be allowing everything.
Yes.
Which that definitely.
Well, and the ego goes, what? What do you mean allow everything? Right?
Whoa, hold the horses.
Like, what if I allowed everything? That would include viruses and all kinds of sicknesses and bacteria and blah, blah, blah.
And murder and death and prosperity and abundance and nothing but love. Well, maybe.
Yeah, but all that other stuff too. But
right.
But all that other stuff is created from that energy of exclusion. So if you don't have that energy of exclusion, that other stuff goes away.
Right.
And that's like this thing that it's like, so I don't like using the word logical in what we do because we don't like go by the mind, but it actually is a logical thing if you think about it from those standpoints,
Right. Well, it becomes natural.
Yes.
And that's the I saw something this morning about why do we seek our full potential? And it's like, because only there are we truly comfortable, natural, happy, and everything gets easy at that place. So why would we do anything but that?
I know.
And I think that allowing everything gets us there.
So it's funny because I've been looking at that too. And I think there's a level of us that honestly believes it's fun to deny ourselves that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's the point of being here? What's the point of all this that we've created?
What's the challenge?
It's the end of the game. So why would we ever want to make it different?
Yeah. And I think that's sometimes why we keep that stuff in ourselves too.
Right.
Well, I'm going to give myself a handicap.
And oh my God, there is.
Ding, 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 ding. That was awesome. Turn off my sound. You obnoxious phone, you. Yes, that's what we do. I'm going to give myself a handicap.
Right. Right. Because otherwise it's too easy if I don't.
Right. So what if
I catch my husband saying all the time, if this were easy, everybody would do it. And I would say, actually, that's why they aren't doing it, is because they believe it's hard and it's really not.
Right. Yes. So funny. And yet we still do it.
Right.
But then what happens is, so then there's something, so it's time for us to wash out those cells, because it's the cells that hold those handicaps, right? That we've.
Right. And it's almost, it's their default setting. I want to say, like, they just carry out orders.
Well, look at the genes, right? The DNA. Well, this gene holds the potential for this kind of cancer, and this gene, this gene marker holds this potential.
Right.
And it's like, wow. So those are the things that we came into this life saying, all right, these are the potential handicaps I'm going to give myself. So if it gets too easy, this is what I'm going to do.
Right. Right.
Or if I ignore my messages long enough, that I have to force myself to change directions, this is what I'm going to do it.
Yeah, this is my ace in the hole. I'll play this card.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about, right?
Yeah, that's like, boy, I'm pretty creative, aren't I?
Yeah. Yeah, we all are.
Yeah.
Wow. That just, it's got to, and it's not for us to get overwhelmed with. It's for us to say, okay, well, guess what? I'm going to clear myself of all those handicaps. I'm going to open everything and just be like, I rock it all.
Right.
There's so many.
I almost feel like that scenario you just talked about is the mind stepping in and saying, okay, I need to manage these circumstances.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And if you shift that and allow the heart to just be in acceptance and create from that place, it flips all those switches back to neutral to be like, anything's potential.
Right. I can choose to use this, and I can choose to use all these other things or not, right. Or something beyond that I can implement now, because this is only just a blueprint. I can go off the blueprint.
Yeah, it feels like that unlocks something.
Oh, yeah.
That feels good.
Yeah, it does. Opens a lot of possibility.
Right.
Well, what's interesting is that we get to a place of, well, okay, so if you look at genetic stuff, right? I changed my eye color when I was a teenager, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have green eyes now, and when I was a kid, if you look at pictures of me, I had blue eyes.
Right.
And I remember thinking, I remember in middle school, I had a teacher that she was just horrible. She was a horrible teacher, but she had the most beautiful green eyes. And I remember thinking, I would love those. I would love to have that color eyes, right? And then I just sort of let it go. And then one day, I don't know, I think I was in my late teens, I realized, wait a second, how did my eyes get to be green? But they did, right? The texture of my hair became curlier. And I had always wanted curly hair. It's just, it's interesting that we can, and I never really thought about it. And I didn't even think about it until it came to me one time in meditation where it was like, look at what you've done just by your intention.
So why would you think anything else is limited?
Yes.
Because to the universe, eye color, money in the bank.
No different.
It's no different.
Right.
It's all, I need a pencil. I have a pencil. Or I desire a pencil.
Yes. Or I am a pencil.
Right. Either one.
Yeah. So, and then it's funny because when I say that, then there's a little voice, a little tiny voice that goes, but you don't want to unlock all of that because that would be too easy.
Right.
That would be too easy. You go back to that. And then I'm like, well, yeah, I do. I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
But I see the patterns of, and see, here's the thing. When we hold a pattern of energy, right, because we've done something a certain way, and it's in our cells, that becomes a lot of the energy that we hold, right? So, for example, there are things that I still see a shadow of that I know I have resolved within myself. But I'll see a pattern start to pop up. Oh, there's a yawn. And I sit in meditation and I'll be like, so let me look at this. Like, why is this here at all? And it's like, well, the shadow of it is still in the blueprint, right? Within myself.
Right.
So whatever that energy is, I'm not even talking about an illness or a sickness. I'm talking about things like, like finances or the way we do certain things or the way we act around certain things, our patterns of behavior and stuff. And it's like, there's still a shadow of that.
Right. I had a session last week and was talking about strength and about the feeling of strength needing to be something that like you put on external to you, and you know the way you hold yourself and the muscles and all this kind of stuff, and the image that came to me was the wind. It's like you don't ever really, you don't see the wind.
Yeah.
You see the wind's effect on things, and that's what you use to judge it. And it's like, what if my strength were like the wind? And talk about a big shift from that. So yes, if you want to judge the wind, there is a bad side to the wind, and it's hurricanes, tornadoes, straight line winds, whatever. But there's also the gentle cooling. There's the wind that generates energy. There's
and the hurricane tornado things clear out a bunch of gunk that doesn't need to be there.
Exactly. Which it's just a question of your perspective.
Right.
Or how you judge it. But it's just the wind. And I felt that was something that vision of your strength being like the wind. It's like you don't have to hold something. It's just there.
Yes. And it doesn't need to be pictured in a certain way. Like, and that's really, it's funny. It's funny, things we expect at a very subtle level from people,
Right.
So like we expect somebody who's, oh, excuse me, there's a yawn again. Strong is to be like this, right? Somebody who like that, and so what's really interesting is, so, I've been in martial arts for a long time. And what I think is really funny is the very different way that men and women go about martial arts typically, right? where men often go in, and I'm not saying my husband is, because he's not like that. My husband just likes doing it like I do. But a lot of men go in and it's like, oh, I've got to be, big and bad. Yeah.
Right.
And the funny part is, one of the biggest things about martial arts is it's all about internal strength.
Right.
It's all about focus. It's all about being centered. It has very little to do with actual physical strength.
Right.
The physical strength comes from what's internal. And that's something, if you do martial arts in its intended nature, that's really what happens. So you can have all kinds of shapes and sizes, which you do. You have all kinds of shapes and sizes in martial arts. People who've been doing it for years and years and years, all shapes and sizes and genders and presentation and everything else. So the funniest thing is, one of the strongest people, one of the most amazing martial artists I've ever met, was this little string bean of a person that I knew, right? And you look at them and think, oh, a strong wind would blow them over.
Right, right.
But yeah, I would always laugh and be like, well, I wouldn't want to be that wind, because,
right.
The way that, and so we, yes, we are used to those effects, judging those effects, right? Like I'm thinking about the wind.
Right. Well, and I watched again a few weeks ago the new Wonder Woman movie, the newer one.
I love it.
And then where she has that change to where she's sitting there fighting with strength and all this kind of stuff, and she goes, no. And the strength came from a different place, from that place of love and that place internally, to where she didn't need that forceful strength. And I guess that gets back to the book, power versus force.
Well, and it gets back to the power of what so it's like funny how many, like, there is a subtle subconscious judgment of coming from the power of love, right? The term coming from the power of love. And I've told people so many times, if we simply came to a place of full acceptance and unconditional love for ourselves, it would solve everything, and we would be done with this existence.
Absolutely.
Instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so many refuse to believe that, because they're like, oh, well, love is all froofy, oh yeah, peace and joy and love. And people think that that's like I don't know if they think it's a cop-out, if they think it's like being a stoner. I mean, it's so funny. Like,
back to the 60s.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't know, because exactly what you're saying. And that's what I loved about the Wonder Woman movie, was that whole thing, about that whole shifting to a place coming from love. So perfect, because that's where our superpowers come from.
Right. All the way down from the cellular level.
Yeah. In an impervious place, in a place that is beyond retribution. It's like when we talk about, well, shit, no, excuse my French. I just forgot what I was going to say. I just went out there. I just totally just popped out and I saw the whole thing and it was gone. Being out there with that retribution. Well, so the biggest thing is, we come to a place of when we're in a place of complete unconditional love, right? For ourselves, we have nothing to hide.
Right.
It's like, this is who I am. And so it's funny, because people sometimes are shocked at my candor on stuff, because I don't have judgment on things, especially about myself, right, at all.
Right.
And so when we come to that place of real acceptance within ourselves, then we come into authenticity. We come into authenticity and we have nothing to hide. there's nothing I'm afraid of that you're going to take away from me, because there's nothing that I am excluding about myself from myself.
Right.
And when I can say, all right, well, whatever, this is who I am. This is me from a place of love, from my higher heart, right? That is a superpower, because there's nothing you can do to me that is going to change me.
Right.
There's nothing you can do to me that's going to make me fearful, that's going to make me angry.
Or make me less.
Or make me less, right, in any way. Right. Because I accept myself as my whole, to tie back to what we were talking about in the beginning,
acceptance of all.
Of all, right. And when you do that, I have found, as I've learned to do that, and it sounds really easy, but we're so out of that practice.
Right. Well, and we're not domesticated that way.
Right. Well, embodied at all. But I have found that as I have been guided to do that, and have been very conscious about, as conscious, as majority of the time, conscious about where I'm coming from, what I'm saying. When I come from that place of authenticity, it's funny, because when you come from that place of authenticity, there's nothing that's really uncomfortable. It just is, right?
Exactly. Right.
Well, when you come from that place of authenticity, something that the ego would have at a prior time judged as a difficult conversation, an uncomfortable situation, or whatever, doesn't exist anymore, because you're coming from this place of love and authenticity, and there's nothing that I'm afraid of in doing that. I am just being.
Right. Right.
So there's nothing you can take away from me. And that is a true superpower.
Right.
And yet, I think in this level of separation, this part of our consciousness that's here in the body, it's something we're just really unused to practicing.
Right.
Because part of
even recognizing.
Oh yeah, because part of the game is forgetting. So. Right.
The first rule.
Yep. To do this, you must forget this much. Right. But so if we commit ourselves to that perspective of accepting, well, it's so funny. What does it come back to? It comes back to unconditional self-love, right? It comes back to aligning our thought, word, and deed to exist, remember how to exist in that place, which sounds so boring to so many. It's like, oh yeah, whatever, I did that yesterday, but
it's being from that place
always. And it's when we can do that everything just aligns for us. Right. What's funny is I had a really powerful week last week, energetically. It was just so powerful. Like I was Wonder Woman, right?
Right.
And I remember towards the end of the week, there was a part of me that was like a little bit nervous about my own power, interestingly enough, right? When I could feel that flowing through again, then it was like, but wait. And it's like,
well, then you get, then the ego's like, well, you just need to be careful.
Yeah.
It's like, you really need to think about things now, because look at how powerful you are. And do you really intend for all this to happen? And yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, well, and I was observing that. And I said, well, why would I be afraid of this? And then I was like, sort of just letting that, consideration come. But that's, again, goes back to why we hold our own handicaps. So when we clear out all our handicaps, right?
Right.
Can I not play in this playground anymore? that was the question that came to me.
I'll get thrown out for not following the rules.
Well, so pretty much, right? Or I'll be done, like, and I won't be, yeah. And it's like, well, but you're sort of done now anyway. You know?
Right.
Like,
Right.
so why not make the best of the play? Like, make the best of the rest of the play. And I honestly have to keep on reminding myself that. Because, you know, it's funny because I go through this, and I think many of us do, especially as we are conscious in our consciousness, right? It's like, well, so we have these huge, blossoming, powerful periods of experience, and then it'll be like something will trigger us, and there'll be the ego going, oh, but wait, maybe we should be a little nervous about that.
Right. Well, have you really thought about what you're doing?
Or wouldn't it be so nice to just go back into a little hole? Like, that's the ego whispering in your ear. So nice in a little hole. We could just curl up by the couch and watch Netflix and just,
right.
Not that that's a bad thing, but like you just get this thing of like, oh, but we'll just retreat.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier, right? That's a big one. It's easier. Just retreat. Don't do anything. And I sit there when I have that tendency, which I don't very often, but it comes. I'm like, so where is that coming from? It's usually after I go through a period like last week, because it did sort of start happening at the end of the week, and I'm like, nope, there's no reason to. Just continue on. What if I flowed with it and let it happen?
Right.
What if I just
that really is the easiest.
Yeah. And didn't put any energy into worrying about, well, what if I did this? Or what if, you know?
Right.
Because I swear it was like Friday that I just thought, oh my gosh, wait, this is going to get out of control.
It's going to be too good.
Right? Well, we do that though.
I know.
We do that about money. We do that about our careers, our jobs, our lives. And it's so interesting. So I was watching this morning I was watching somebody's live stream on Facebook, and they were talking about, their perspective on relationships, like,
mm-hmm.
And how it's time for us to, and like, it's basically the same kind of stuff. I mean, I think I did that on my podcast like 2 weeks ago. Time to rewrite the book of relationships, and, to come to a different place, and blah, blah, blah. And so, I was typing on the thing as we were talking and interacting, and I was like, well, what's interesting is I was the last person, like if I looked at like a list of people or just give backgrounds from where I came, like where everybody came from, blah, 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 I would have been one of the last people to think I'd ever been in a marriage that lasted longer than a couple of years, right?
Right.
Well, even get married. I didn't even want to get married. It was like not even my intention when I was younger, because, I had just this life where my father had been married and divorced 4 times, and my mother had been married and divorced multiple times. And I was just like, yeah, I don't need to go through that, just.
Right.
And so I focused on what happened was, because that was not my intention, right? I didn't focus on that.
Right.
I focused on me. And I focused on figuring out who I was. Of course, I'm still doing that, remembering that. But my focus was really solely about finding my way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't finding a man. It was
tell me what's your way.
No, it was finding my way, right? And so I happened upon my husband, and he was in the same place, and we were just like, hey, well, this is great while it lasts, I'm not looking for anything, neither am I, blah, blah, blah. We have a great time together. And so, almost 27 years later. We're coming up on our 25th wedding anniversary. But it's like, but that wasn't intentional. And I've had constant reminders throughout my whole relationship, constant reminders from my higher self saying, this is not a dependency. I never came into the relationship as a dependency. I was self-sufficient, self-supporting, had my own career, had my own goals and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, as long as we continued on, it was great. And then it was funny because there's one point that I went through this whole thing where everything crashed down, and I thought that, and basically it was for me to recognize that, like, I be okay with it continuing on or not, even long into the relationship at that point, like 20 years or less, a little less, but still a significant amount of time. Don't ever just get into that place where it's easy and dependable, something you depend on as being there, instead of just appreciating what's there. So why was I talking about this? It's how to do with the relationship thing. Wow, I'm just all over the place this morning.
Well, when you stopped focusing, your focus wasn't attracting a relationship.
Right. So like, I wasn't like, I need to get married, I need to have this, I need to, blah, 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 blah. And that was actually part of my higher plan, which, that was funny, but it was not my conscious plan, which is the opposite for a lot of people, right? But it wasn't like something I was looking for outside of myself. And it wasn't something that I was focused on. What were we getting at with this? There was something that was important about bringing that up. I'm just out there today, obviously.
Yeah, I am too.
I'm just like, well, obviously we hit on something that's already shifting. So
right, I think so.
The authenticity. What were we talking about when we got into that?
The wholeness. Oh, self-love, coming from that place of self-acceptance, self-love.
Oh, right. Well, and that, well, there was something else that something you said sparked something, which is why I was bringing that up, and now I can't remember what it was. Whoever's watching or listening, you'll get it. You'll probably get the connection better than I can remember it right now. So anyway, crud, I can't believe I've just like totally lost that train of thought. Anyway, let's get back to where we were. Sorry for that side thing. There was a point. Gone now. Authenticity. Superpowers. Oh, well, and here's a part of it too, is whatever we create, is for us to not, what if we accepted from the whole that we didn't create it, right? As well as create it. We created it, but what if it doesn't exist anymore? Right. What if, I have a lot of money and then I don't have a lot of money? What if I have a great relationship and then I don't? What if I have a fabulous career and then I don't? What if I have this and then I don't? Like, but we never think of the don't. We always think of the do, right?
Right.
Of I've got to have this because I don't have it now. But what if you say, but I'm pretty cool where I am now? And what if I then have this? Because then that's another way of like switching that. What if I don't? What if I don't have this lack anymore? What would that look like?
Right.
And then sometimes we're just as afraid of that as we are of losing something.
Right.
And that goes back to that wholeness and authenticity. So going back to the cells, I think that's where we should focus today.
Right.
We said before. I think that's where we're already going. I think we've already gone there, and you and I. Oh, we got a little bit off track there. what if I accept it? I mean, it really comes down to a lot of these like half a dozen things that you and I end up coming back to, but it's different perspectives of the same thing.
Right.
What if I allowed all possibility? What if I allowed all possibility for myself? What if I allowed, because, you want to talk about the whole, right? What if I, what would that look like to create this? What would that look like if I allowed all possibility to do so?
You sent me something at the end of the week that was your creation statement for your meditation.
I give myself permission.
Right.
That was so powerful.
To have it all, to manifest in magic, ease and flow, to trust beyond any thought, to fully love and be loved fully, to fully support and be supported fully, to transcend all lack creation and commit to wholeness creation.
Yeah.
I think this is a basis of that.
Right. And that sounds it's so weird. And I don't even remember what triggered me to do that. I forgot all about that because it was so powerful to say, you know what? I give me permission.
Well, I know when I do my hypnosis, one of the first things I say is, you give yourself permission to do this. You give yourself permission to have this time, to be this relaxed, to do the what you came here to do. So I think that we underestimate the power of that permission with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of that. And I give myself permission to do that.
Right. Yep.
Yep. That's the clincher. Let's go do that.
Yeah, I'm writing this down today.
Yep, I give myself permission. Yeah, anything to transcend the rules, to the rules of the 3D, to behold, to there's so many things. Oh yeah, I can just feel that. I feel that moving around again already.
Yep, I can too.
All right, you ready? Let's go.
I'm ready.
Oh,
I could have done that all day.
uh-huh. I'm going to have to carve out some time to go back to that because I was like, oh, I remember this from last week. This is what really sort of topped off the feeling really powerful thing.
You know what occurred to me in that is, looking at the cellular level and how we have, even at a cellular level, cells locked into functions and jobs. And it's like we're discovering that stem cells can really do anything.
Yeah.
Why can we not have a body of stem cells that can do anything?
Yeah.
And it was just like, I just felt like not only did all the doors open, the walls and everything just disappeared. And it was like, it was just like, wow.
Yeah, that's a nice way of looking.
I felt that, how if you're walking like 20 dogs and they're all pulling and you're holding back, and it's like, just let go of the leashes. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, there was something in there. I can't remember either what it was specifically, but there was something there. All of a sudden I felt like I went, oh.
Yeah. And it was like it was like a letting go, but it was so much more.
I know. Well, it's funny because there's I've noticed that lately too, particularly in the last several months, that because I don't give a lot of energy to a lot of things that I used to give energy to that a lot of people do.
Right.
Getting sick, doing this, doing that, can't do this, but that I observe others doing that, and I can't even get myself to engage in that conversation. I can't even get myself. And it's not that I judge the person. It's that I'm just like, I just don't want to put my energy to that anymore.
Right.
Or I don't have the energy to put to that anymore because I so much better like choosing to put my energy elsewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I felt really good. And that's that whole, because as soon as we stop putting this energy to what this is and what this isn't, what this cell is and what it's not, what it can do and what it can't, blah, 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 and holding those leashes, like you're saying, you let go of the leash, you're just like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So now I can take all that energy that I didn't even realize was being diverted to that, to what I want to divert it to, what I want to focus it on.
Yeah. And it was funny because Obi, as his usual self, came in the middle of them.
I heard.
And then he starts, because I'm in the dining room today, he gets up on the piano and he starts, what I've discovered is him and my daughter's cats, all three of them like to chew on my bamboo plant, which is why the bottom leaves are all just stems right now. And it's like looking like crap. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big plant. So what does he do? He comes in, he starts playing with my feet. Then because I just like sort of, shook him off, he jumps up on the piano because he knows that'll get my attention, right?
Right.
He starts chewing on one of the main branches of it. And I'm not going to yell at him in the middle of the thing. So I threw my pen to hit the pot to startle him, right?
Right.
And all it really did was he's like, well, he's looking around like, what was that?
Where is this thing I need to play with?
Yeah. Yeah. But it did actually work because it then diverted him and he like jumped off and was looking for it and then he walked away. Oh, that was funny. And I'm just like, what was that about? I don't know. What do you put your energy to? Right. But that's the whole picture of diversions that we have, right?
Right.
Anyway, yeah, so many more layers of that. Well, this was a really meaty one. There's a lot of stuff we talked about. We sort of went around in circles, but came back to the same place, and it was really, that was lovely. So thank you everybody for joining us. And so on that, I give myself permission to thing this week.
Oh, yeah.
And just give yourself permission to be a superhero.
Or a stem cell.
Or a stem cell.
Your choice.
Or both.
Or both, right.
A stem cell superhero. So
that's what we'll have to call this one, is the stem cell
superhero. You want to learn more, then you have to listen.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. All right, I can't even write that down because I threw my pen. It's over there in the other part of the room. So So everybody sit on that, and we will see you next time. This is Ascended World, and till then, this is Angela Coulter, and
Sarah Sieg, Avignone.
have a great one.